The wind was cold that morning, but Kang Mi-ra's hands were colder. She stood at the back of the school auditorium, her old backpack hanging off one shoulder, her fingers clutched around a crumpled worksheet. All around her, students buzzed with excitement. A new school project had just been announced, one that would pair students from different social classes to plan a community fair. Of course, another plan to bridge the gap, another reminder that she did not belong. She tried to sneak out before the list was posted, but fate had other ideas. As the board was unveiled, a wave of voices echoed through the hallway. Oh my God. Cha Ji-woo? He's in group 3 with... Wait, who's that girl? Mi-ra froze. She looked up. And there it was, group 3, Cha Ji-woo and Kang Mi-ra, the perfect prince of Hanseong-hai. And the invisible nerd who stitched her own backpack at night. She looked down, avoided every gaze, rushed out before anyone could laugh. That afternoon, she sat alone in the library, rereading the list again and again. It had to be a mistake. She didn't want charity. She didn't want attention. She just wanted to get through her final year without being noticed. Excuse me. The voice made her jump. She looked up. He was right there. Cha Ji-woo. Tall, handsome, every button of his. Blazer perfect. His presence smelled like wealth and warmth at the same time. He smiled. You're Mi-ra, right? She nodded once. I think we're partners, he said, holding up the list. She looked away. I'll ask to switch. His smile didn't waver. You can try, but I won't. She stared at him. Why not? He shrugged, tilting his head. Because I've been watching you. Her breath caught. Excuse me? You're always the first in class and the last to leave the library. I think that says something. She frowned. Like what? He smiled again. That you don't give up. And I admire that. Mi-ra stood abruptly, grabbing her things. Look, I don't need you admiring me. Wait, I know how this goes. You pretend to be nice, everyone laughs behind my back, and I get to be the joke for a week. Ji-woo looked stunned. No one's laughing. She narrowed her eyes. They will. Then she walked away. But even as she left, she hated how much her heart had sped up. The next day, he waited for her in the courtyard, again, and the day after that, and the day after, always with the same smile, always with a new reason to talk. You left your pencil on the floor. I think we should pick a theme for the project. Do you always drink banana milk? Me too, she ignored him. At first, but one afternoon he held out a notebook. I wrote some ideas down. Want to look? She reached for it. Their fingers touched. She pulled back instantly. He chuckled. Relax, I don't bite. She opened the notebook. There were doodles, silly ones, a lopsided tent, a drawing of her, with wild hair, glasses, and a crown. What is this? She asked. He leaned closer. Our community fair idea. You're the queen of the nerds, I'm the loyal knight. Mi-ra rolled her eyes, but her lips twitched. It was the first time in years someone made her want to smile. Over the next week, they worked together, laughing, teasing. At one point, she caught him staring at her while she read. He didn't look away. Why? Are you looking at me like that? She asked. He said quietly, because you don't look at me the way everyone else does. By Friday, everyone had noticed. Rumors were blooming like spring petals. The nerd girl. With Ji-woo? She must be helping him with homework or something? No way it's real. Mi-ra heard it all. She tried not to care, but she did. She had spent so long being invisible. Now she was a target. And worse, she was starting to like him. That weekend he invited her to work at his house just to rehearse, he promised. My mom won't be home. She hesitated, but curiosity and maybe something deeper said yes. The house was massive, white marble floors, glass staircase. It didn't feel like a home. It felt like a museum. Mi-ra followed him in nervously. Clutching her thrifted sweater, Ji-woo opened a grand door. His room was modern, full of instruments and posters. He handed her a hot drink. Relax, he said. You're safe here. And for a few hours, she believed him. They worked side by side, their hands touched. He played guitar, she hummed along, then he looked at her and said, Mi-ra. What? I like being around you. Her heart stopped. But before she could reply, the door burst open and in walked Sin-ra. Everything froze. Her heels clicked on the floor like judgment. Her eyes scanned Mi-ra from head to toe. A long silence. Then, venomous and calm, "Who is this?" Ji-woo stood up. "Mom, this is my partner. For the project." Sin-ra stepped forward, eyes cold. She smiled without warmth and said, "This project doesn't require you bringing in people like her." Mi-ra flinched. Sin-ra didn't stop. "Look at you, that uniform, that smell. Is this your idea of rebellion, Ji-woo?" He opened his mouth, but she raised her hand. "I won't have charity cases walking through this house like they belong." Mi-ra's lips parted, but no words came out. She felt so small, so worthless, so exposed. Ji-woo stepped in. "Mom, stop." Sin-ra didn't even look at him. "You'll thank me later." Then she turned to Mi-ra. "You know where the door is?" Mi-ra looked at Ji-woo. He looked helpless, torn. She swallowed hard, then bowed. "I'm sorry for the trouble," and walked out without looking back. But her hands were shaking, and inside, something had shattered. The Monday after that night was colder than usual, but not because of the weather. Mi-ra didn't speak a word the entire day. She kept her hood up, her glasses fogged, her pencil scribbling furiously across her notes. Everyone noticed. No one asked, except for one person, Ji-woo. He stood by the library entrance after last period, waiting. Again. And this time, when Mi-ra walked past him, she didn't look up, didn't blink, didn't even acknowledge he was there. She didn't want to cry in public, so she held her breath all the way to the restroom stall and stayed there until the hallway lights flickered. That evening, as she unpacked her books, a small note fell. From her textbook. It wasn't hers. It was folded into a tiny square with slightly messy handwriting on the front. "If you won't look at me, maybe you'll read me." Her heart skipped. She hesitated, then unfolded it. Inside, in neat ink. "You once told me I was annoying, but being ignored by you hurts way more. Ji-woo." She stared at the paper. Her first instinct was to throw it away, but her hand didn't move. Instead, she folded it again and placed it in her notebook. The next morning, another note, inside her locker. "I brought an umbrella, just in case you forgot yours again." "Ji-woo." She blinked, looked around, no one in sight. That afternoon it rained, hard. She stood at the school gate, hesitating. She hadn't brought her umbrella. Of course, she was about to run through it when a black umbrella appeared over her head. She turned Ji-woo. He didn't say anything, just held it out. Their eyes met. For a moment they stood in the rain, under the same shelter, and she finally said, "Thank you." From that day on, the notes kept coming, small, quiet, but full of things no one had ever said to her. "You looked brave today, even if no one saw it. I played that song you hummed. It stayed in my head. I like that you walk like you're trying not to disturb the world." At first, she never replied, but then she started writing back, just one sentence at a time, folded into his locker, left in his desk drawer. "You're not as smooth as you think you are. Stop using all your stationery on me. Maybe I like that song too." They never talked about the notes in person, but every glance in the hallway, every silent smile in the library, they spoke, louder than words. One afternoon, he caught her standing alone near the vending machines. He walked up and leaned on the wall beside her. "You're reading a new book," he said. She nodded. "Want to know what it's about?" He tilted his head. She replied, "A girl who doesn't believe anyone can love her until someone does." He blinked. "And does he?" She shrugged. "Too early to tell." He leaned closer. "I hope he does." She looked away, her cheeks burning. Later. That week, they worked on a new poster for the community project. Alone in the empty classroom, he watched her draw. She watched him watch her, and finally he asked, "Why do you always sit in the back?" She paused. "Because it's safer." He frowned. "From what?" "From people, from disappointment, from thinking you matter when you don't." Ji-woo didn't speak for a moment, then said quietly, "You matter to me." She dropped her marker. Their eyes met, and he added, "You're The only one who doesn't treat me like I'm made of gold. Mi-ra laughed once awkwardly. I just see you, he stepped closer, and I see you too. That night she got home and pulled out all the notes, laid them across her desk like a secret treasure map. She smiled, for the first time. Really smiled. But deep down, something still tugged at her. A fear. A voice that whispered, "This is not your world." And she knew exactly whose voice it sounded like. Escalation the next morning, Ji-woo waited for her by the school gate, held out a coffee. She took it. He grinned. "My driver said we looked like a scene from a drama." She rolled her eyes. "Tell your driver to mind his business," he laughed. "You're the only girl who tells me that." "I'm not a girl," she muttered. He raised an eyebrow. She added, "I'm just me." "Exactly," he said. "And that's who I like." The word hung in the air, like. She tried not to overthink it, but that night she wrote him a note, and for the first time, it was long. "I don't know what this is, but it's the first time I've wanted to go to school for something other than grades. I'm scared, but thank you for seeing me. Mi-ra." She tucked it in his locker early the next morning, but when she got to class, he was already waiting, holding the note. His smile, softer than ever. She sat down. He didn't speak, just slid a small paper bag across the desk. Inside, a silver pen and a card that said, "So you can keep writing, so even when you think no one's reading." Mi-ra looked at him, eyes wide. He whispered, "Don't stop now." She didn't, because somewhere between the silence, the rain, the umbrella, the notes, she had started believing that maybe, just maybe, she could be enough. But life, as always, was preparing to test that belief, and the next chapter would come faster and harder than either of them could imagine. The sun was already setting when Mi-ra stood in front of the black iron gate again. She had told herself she wouldn't come back, that the last time was the last. But Ji-woo had insisted. "It's just for a rehearsal," he had said, eyes hopeful. "There's no one home," he had promised, and she wanted to believe him, so she did. The mansion looked the same, perfect and cold. Marble and silence. Ji-woo opened the door with a smile and a quiet, "Hi." She smiled back, even if her hands were trembling slightly in her coat pockets. They climbed the staircase in silence. His room felt warmer than last time, cozy somehow, maybe because it smelled faintly of him now. Fabric softener, citrus, and old books. He set up the materials for the school fair, the art supplies between them. They sat on the floor, shoulder to shoulder. Mi-ra was drawing flyers. Ji-woo was trying out and failing to cut a banner straight. "Why does my line look drunk?" he muttered. She giggled. "Because you pressed too hard," he pouted. "I'm good at everything else, why not this?" She looked at him with a soft smile. "Maybe you need to stop trying to be good at everything." He looked at her. Really looked. "What if I don't know how?" Her eyes met his. "Then maybe I can help." A long pause. Then he said quietly, "Mi-ra." She raised her head. He wasn't smiling. He looked serious, nervous. "I've never had someone like you in my life before." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean someone who looks at me like I'm just a person." She didn't know what to say, so he went on. "I like that. I like you." Her heart stopped. For a second, she thought she had misheard. But he was still looking at her, eyes sincere. "I really like you." A beat of silence. Then, bang, the door burst open. It happened so fast Mi-ra turned in shock as the same cold voice from that awful night cut through the air like a knife. "I knew it," Sin-ra said, standing in the doorway in a pristine white coat. "I knew you were hiding something." Ji-woo stood up instantly. "Mom, it's not what you think," but she ignored him. Her gaze locked on Mi-ra, full of ice and disdain. "You just couldn't stay away, could you?" Mi-ra froze. Sin-ra walked in slowly, eyes scanning Mi-ra like she was filth on the floor. "You think because my son smiled at you, you belong here now?" Mi-ra tried to speak, but no words came. Her face flushed with shame. Sin-ra took another step forward. "This house isn't a place for girls like you." Ji-woo stepped in front of her. "Stop it." Sin-ra raised her hand sharply. "You will." Not raise your voice to me, Jiwoo. He didn't back down. She's not doing anything wrong. She doesn't belong in our world. She belongs wherever she's respected. His voice cracked. I respect her. Mi-ra's eyes widened. But Seira-cha didn't waver. This girl is using you, playing poor for pity. Mi-ra finally spoke. Her voice was shaking but clear. I never asked for anything from you. Seira-cha turned to her with a cold smile. You took my son's attention. That's everything. Mi-ra's chest ached. She couldn't breathe. The walls closed in. She turned to Jiwoo, his eyes pleaded. I didn't know she'd come home, he whispered. I believe you, she said, and she meant it. But she also knew this wasn't her world. Not really. She picked up her bag, bowed to Seira-cha. I'm sorry for the trouble, and walked out again. But this time, she didn't cry until she got home. That night, Jiwoo texted, called, nothing. She didn't answer. She couldn't, because every time she saw his name, she heard his mother's voice, you don't belong. The next morning, he was waiting outside school. She saw him turn the other way, but he followed. Mi-ra, she stopped. He stood in front of her, breathless. I'm sorry. It's not your fault, she said, voice flat. He looked pained. I want to fight for this, I don't. Her eyes watered. Not if it means being humiliated like that again. He reached for her hand. She pulled back. I like you, he said. No, she whispered. That's the problem. He looked broken. She walked away. For the next few days, they barely saw each other. Rumors spread again. No one knew the truth. Only that Jiwoo looked tired now, and Mi-ra had stopped smiling. One afternoon, a note appeared. In her locker. Only 4 words. Don't let her win. She stared at it for a long time and finally threw it away. That Friday, Jiwoo didn't come to school, then Monday, then Tuesday. Mi-ra's heart raced with panic. Was he okay? Did something happen? She told herself she didn't care, but her hands shook all the same. By Thursday, he was back. But he didn't look at her, didn't speak, didn't send a note. She had broken something, and it wasn't just his heart. She walked into the library, found the seat where he used to sit. There was a single post-it note on the table. I don't regret telling you. I just regret not being enough to protect you. She cried silently, because it was the first time anyone had ever tried. It happened quietly. So quietly, in fact, that most people did not even notice. The chair in the back row was empty. The name Kang Mi-ra wasn't called during roll call. The library seat where she used to sit for hours, gone, just like that. She had vanished. Cha Ji-woo waited by the gate. Again, and again, until the weather changed and his scarf was soaked and no one stopped to say anything except, did you hear? Kang Mi-ra transferred schools. The words hit him like ice water. He didn't believe it, he wouldn't, so he ran to the teacher's office. Is it true? He asked. The teacher blinked, a little surprised. I thought you knew. Her parents submitted the paperwork 2 days ago. She's been officially withdrawn. Jiwoo turned on his heel and marched straight to the only person who could answer. Him, his mother. She was seated in the sunroom, sipping tea with her usual elegance as if nothing had happened. I need to talk to you, he said, voice tight. She didn't look up. If it's about that girl, the subject is closed. You did this? She set down her cup. I simply had a conversation with her family. I reminded them that your future cannot include distractions. His hands clenched. You threatened them? I offered guidance, she said calmly. You humiliated her. You made her feel like trash in her own skin. She is not our kind. Jiwoo, she's better than you'll ever understand. Someday you'll see this was the right thing. He shook his head, trembling with anger. No. Someday you'll realize you destroyed the only real thing in my life. He stormed out, broke a vase on his way up the stairs, locked his door, and stayed inside until the next morning, and the next. At school, his friends noticed the change. Hey, are you okay? Where's that nerd girl you used to hang with? Jiwoo didn't respond. He didn't laugh anymore, didn't flirt, didn't touch the basketball court. He was empty. But Mi-ra? Mi-ra had disappeared like a ghost in the wind, and the ache she left behind was louder than silence. Meanwhile, across town, Mi-ra was adjusting to a new school, new uniform, new classmates. No one knew her. No one whispered about her. And yet, she had never felt more invisible, because when Jiwoo said he liked her, part of her started to believe she could be seen. Now she wasn't so sure. Her mother noticed the difference. "You're quieter than usual." "I'm just tired." "You miss your old school?" Mi-ra hesitated, then nodded, but not for the reasons her mom thought. She would stare at the old notes in her drawer, reread every sentence, folded them again, and placed them in a box. One day, she thought. Maybe one day. Back at Hanseong High, the school was preparing for the final semester showcase, a celebration, music, projects, community booths. Jiwoo had no interest until he saw a familiar flyer on the wall. It was the same design Mi-ra had made for the community. "Fair?" He stared at it for a long time, then pulled out his phone. He scrolled back through every message, every photo, every note she had sent. Stopped at one, the last one she had given him before everything fell apart. "I'm scared. But thank you for seeing me." He clenched his jaw and made a decision. He went home, went to the garage, dug through old boxes until he found what he needed. A bicycle, rusty but working. He rode it across the bridge to the other side of town. He asked every convenience store clerk, every bookshop cashier, every corner vendor. No one had seen her until an old lady selling roasted chestnuts pointed. "Try the small book booth at the weekend market. I think there's a girl like that there." He waited until Saturday, walked through the market with his heart in his throat. Then, there she was, standing behind a makeshift table, wearing a beige cardigan, stacking second-hand books. Her hair was tied up, her eyes focused. He stood still, afraid to move, afraid she would vanish again, but then she looked up and saw him. Their eyes locked, a beat of silence. Then, she looked down again, back to her books, like he wasn't there. But Jiwoo stepped forward. "Hi," he said softly. She didn't reply. He placed something on the table. A small flower, fresh, simple, her favorite kind. "You disappeared." "I had to," she said. "I know," he whispered. Silence. People walked by, laughed, chatted. The world moved, but they stayed still. He took a breath. "I've never stopped looking for you." She looked at him again. This time her eyes were wet. "You didn't stop her." I froze. "I'm sorry." A pause. "I wanted to be worth it," she said. "You were," he said. "You still are." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a note, her handwriting. He unfolded it on the table. "You told me not to stop writing." He took out a pen, and below her words he wrote, "Then let me keep reading you for the rest of my life." Tears streamed down her face. She stepped out from behind the table. He opened his arms and she fell into them, right there, in the middle of the market, with the world watching. For the first time, she didn't care. It had been 3 months. Spring had arrived quietly, and with it new uniforms, new notebooks, and another layer of time between what was and what could have been. But some wounds don't close with seasons. Some stories don't end when the last page is turned, especially not theirs. Jiwoo never forgot. Even when the school returned to its perfect schedule. Even when Senior HR pretended everything was back to normal. Even when he stood in front of the mirror in his tailored blazer, looking like the model son again. He had lost something, and he wasn't going to pretend it didn't matter. So when his class planned a field trip to the Spring Culture Fair downtown, he didn't roll his eyes like the others. He signed up first, and when they arrived, streamers waving, booths packed with students from every district, he didn't look for food or games. He looked for her. Mi-ra didn't know their school would be there. She was simply helping her mother again, arranging second-hand books under a worn pink canopy. She tied her apron, brushed dust from her sleeves, and smiled at a little girl who came looking for fairy tales. But her fingers trembled every time someone in uniform walked past. Every shadow made her heart flinch. Then, it happened. She turned to get change from the cash box and froze because there he was, Jiwoo, standing just meters away, backlit by the afternoon sun, hair slightly tousled, tie loose, eyes locked on hers like no time had passed. For a moment, neither moved. The world spun. People laughed, walked, bargained, and yelled. but they were frozen in a different gravity. He walked to her slowly, one step, another, and stopped in front of her table. No umbrella, no notes, no silver pen, just him, and that look. "Hi," he said softly. She swallowed. "Hi." A pause. Then, "I thought you forgot me," she said. He smiled gently. "I tried." She blinked, confused. "But I couldn't," he added. "Not even for a second." She bit her lip, looked down. "I didn't expect to see you. I hoped I would." Another silence. Then he looked at her hands, calloused now from folding boxes and stacking paper. He reached for them, slowly, carefully, and when she didn't pull back, he held them warm, steady. "I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough," he whispered. "You were brave, just not free." He nodded. "I am now." She looked at him again, and something in her chest softened. He took a deep breath. "I don't care where you live." "I do," she said. He tilted his head. She smiled faintly. "Because I want to invite you in." His eyes widened, but she continued. "My world isn't made of marble and chandeliers. It's rice cookers and second-hand socks. But it's mine." He leaned closer. "Then let me be a part of it." She blinked. "Why?" "Because it's the only place I've ever felt like home." She broke. Tears welled, lips trembled, and before she could say anything more, he pulled her into his arms, held her tight, like he had waited a lifetime. People walked around them, some stared, some smiled. None of it mattered, because in that crowded fair under an old pink canopy and the scent of paper and spring wind, two souls that had been pulled apart, finally reconnected. The kiss wasn't rushed, it wasn't dramatic, it was soft, earnest, real. And when they parted, she whispered, "You're not perfect, Ji-woo." He laughed. "Thank God." Later that night, they sat on the curb, eating sweet rice cakes, his blazer folded on her lap, her head resting on his shoulder. They didn't say much, because some love stories don't need a narrator, just a beginning. And this was theirs.